Okay, so this is part 2 of our workflow video. So in this part, I'm going to be going over the work process, or how we're actually going to be working over for the animation production. Alright, so I'm going to be choosing a certain frame. Alright, I'm going to be choosing this frame just to make it easier. Alright, so how do we go through the line art process? So it's really simple, really. But there are ways to make life easier. So as I've earlier discussed, we can use the line tool or the arc tool. These are the two types of lines that you'll be encountering. So the arc tool, while the arc tool does, while the arc tool can give you curvature, if it's often it gives you this extra control point, which is redundant, as we can also get a similar or an even cleaner result using just, the line tool. So if we don't need this control point, for instance, if we don't need a gradual increase, I mean, like a more S-like increase, we can just use the line tool and it'll get the job done. It'll give us a curve. All right. So just to recap, most of the time we're going to be using the line tool uh, as opposed to the arc tool, because the line tool gives us less control points and gives us more freedom to add in the number of control points we want. So once again, the minimum number of control points you can have is 2. So that's why we're going to be using a line tool, as it's easier to control and manipulate. Let's get that out of the way. Okay, so now let's talk about our characters. About the line art process, rather. So it's straightforward. We're just going to be making use of the line art, right? We're just going to be making use of the line. But however, there is an easier way to get the job done, which I'm going to be showing over on a bit. Let me show you first the manual process. If, let's say, for instance, we're just going to be using over the line tool. So for this, I'm going to make another vector layer for demonstration purposes. Okay. Going back, I'm going to show you the manual labor of doing this, which is making a line individually and then adding control points. So you can do that. You could make a line, add a control point, and you could also, by the way, also a good tip, you can get rid of the handles, by the way, and this should make it easier, This can also give you more with how you control things. Okay. Oh yeah. And then we could resize it. You could also lower it down so we can see the rough better. You could lower down the opacity. So this is manual labor, right? Then you can, since this is a horn, always remember to reference back to the character sheet. I've been drawing these fellas for some time now, so I've gotten a little bit used to their design, so I can just get it out. But for the assistant animators especially, always make sure to have the character sheet or character model with you, because even I get errors sometimes whenever I'm drawing them. So make sure they're around so you know how you're gonna clean up or place the line tool. Okay, so Kron has a horn here, so we can, oops, I'm out of my layer. We can do that, extend it so that, since it's the same skin, and then we can make another line, right? Then we can do that again. By the way, I'm gonna just resize this so I can show you a better way later of resizing everything. So let's say we're modeling Kron. I'm just gonna model Kron's head to make this quicker. So we're tracing over her head, right? And that, using the line tool, going back, making another line. So tracing it line by line can get really tedious real quick. There's an easier way. So then we can add a control point here, extend that, and then because this point is sharper, we can hit. Oh no, it's not a continuous shape. We can do a line. So I'm just gonna model Kron's head. Her horns are part of her head. So her ears also gonna be seamless in this part. Alright. So we're gonna make sure, by the way, we're gonna make sure that this is going to be closed. Alright. So we have Kron's head modeled out. So inside, we know that this is gonna be a closed shape. How do we know that? Right? Well, it's her head. If we look over here, it's gonna be a closed shape. If we're gonna be if we're gonna be drawing with her hair with parts which don't really require closed shape, like this section of her hair, for instance, we don't really need to make it a closed shape. We're just gonna have to make sure that it connects with the line, however. So let me just put it like that. So this part, we don't really we can also, by the way, just for make it easier, just draw out the lines and then edit the lines later on. Makes it a whole lot easier. Alright. So we want to make these certain lines connected, right? How do we do that? We can go over here to our tape tool on our toolbar, or alternatively, we can hit T on our keyboard. You should see this green thing, right? Make sure the join vectors and the smooth is selected. Then click on the endpoint or the end of our line, drag that out, and then make sure you're seeing another. One way of making this easier, by the way, is to make sure they're a little bit far apart. And then click on your tape tool again, and then you should see these two connecting. Then if you've lowered the opacity, you see how there are these things that overlay. This means they're not connected. But if we connect it with a tape tool, we can see that, oh, it's one line now. Then we can, hold on. Alright, so how do we make this sharper? Again, removing the handles allows it to become sharper. So let me just join these lines real quick. Right, so here again. So let me just join these lines again. So again, loosen it up a bit. Join these lines, their endpoints. Boom, they're connected. Again, loosen it up a bit. Then tape tool, join these lines. Boom, they're connected. Sorry, it's okay. Sometimes it. Oh, I didn't select my. It just. Okay, sorry. Sometimes it takes a while for the program to detect these. And then with our tape tool. Boom. Right. What? Sorry. Okay. And then we can, as you can see, we've gotten this section as one big line now. And then we could simply just readjust it. So here's an easy way, by the way, of readjusting it. We can straighten out these lines first and then be concerned with the handles later. So we can do that by removing the handles first and then reconstructing them. Slowly but surely reconstructing them using this. Alright. So now it's one big line, by the way. I'll just do that. You can clean, if there are these kinds of edges, by the way, you can clean it out by adding a handle if there is none. You can add a handle by just clicking. There. If, you straighten it out formally. So there, this is an example of a not closed shape, but a big line, which is exactly what we're going to be doing. We're going to make sure that these things are connected. So alternatively, you could just literally use a line, then go over it. Could just use a line, And then, wait, I'm spoiling. So that was quite tedious, right? How do we fix that? Well, if it's let me explain a few things. Rather than manually adding in these lines and then connecting them, here's another way you can explore in these. So again, I've discussed something called a closed shape. So a closed shape is essentially a shape that, excuse me, all of when wherein all of these lines are connected. Her head, for instance, alongside with this part of the ear. That's a closed shape because all of these things are supposed to be connected. As you can see here, it's supposed to be connected, everything here. However, one lines can easily be done by just, doing this. So how do we achieve a faster progress of doing this? We can do so by making use of a line and the rectangle rather, and a rectangle. So now you must be wondering, how the heck? So let me remodel this for you on the newer layer that I've created. So we can make use of the rectangle to plot out points directly. So here we have 4 points. We know there are going to be more points later on, or we can just add these points in. After all, they are curving. But however, for now we are only going to be concerned about the crucial parts, or where we know there are going to be points. So over here, we know there's going to be a point nearby these horns. There's going to be a point here, and there's also going to be a point near her chin. It doesn't matter where you place these points. You place them if you know they're going to be there. Alright, so alternatively you could place it there or there, but the entire gist is you want to make sure you're capturing the entire shape. So by then, as we've earlier discussed, we could add in points. So we can add in a point here for the lower part of her ear, here, and then here. We could then bring this down, reshape it. We could then reshape it, add control points where you know they'll be vital. We could put one here. Then I think this should be okay for now. So then how do we curve it out? Again, as I've said, we could drag out this blue line, or we could also manipulate them using the handles. Because we previously had no handles, then these handles are going to be independent from the other one. So we could drag it out, boom, like that, and then we could also make for a horn, then over here on the crescent. Oops. Just do that. Boom. 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 Right. And then we're going to add a control point here since there's a bit. I'm going to be adding a control point to smooth it out. Okay. Use the reference to make sure you're getting the shapes right. Okay, I'm gonna leave off with here. This should be a little bit good enough just for demonstration purposes. So I think, so again, for working with a closed shape, we could simply use a rectangle. And then if we're using with something that can easily be done with just a line, like this portion of her hair that isn't closed, you can just use the line, bring that line out where we know the endpoint, where we know crucial endpoints are going to be. So right here, over here. Just like the rectangle, we then manipulate where the control points are going to be. We're going to be adding a control point. Going to hit CTRL. We're going to remove the handles first to make it easier. Then adding another control point where I know there's going to be a control point present. Just going to remove again, make it easier. Straighten that. No, they're clustered. I'm just gonna... You could also use the eraser tool. Then you can just extend it if ever you have any errors. Just like that. Control. Then add. And then just like that, using one line, it's a lot quicker than making individual lines. Hold on. That's a lot easier than making individual points. So then we could pump this out. Alright, let's say you want to make both of these smaller. We could select both of them by using the select tool, shift, and then clicking on these lines. And then we can pump them down like we shown last time. Then we can also edit using the pump tool. So again, we can also edit how these lines are looking again. I'm going to make this independent from the other. So I'm gonna leave it like that. That's basically it. Just a quicker way of lining it out. Alright. So I'm gonna just make a small process video on this. So you can just watch. I'm gonna speed this up, by the way. Oh yeah, you can also use other shapes. I'm going to say this, by the way. It'll be a lot easier, especially if closed shapes you make use of. If you're going to be using closed shapes, it's a lot easier. If you're also going to be using closed shapes, this is going to make the coloring process a lot harder, as there are going to be less possible open gaps, which might if there are open gaps, basically it's going to take a while for you to probably find where they are, which might take you a little bit more time when we get to the coloring process. So if you can do it with closed shapes, do it with closed shapes. That's what I'm going to say. So for instance, here, this is a closed shape. I used a closed shape. I can do it with a closed shape, so I used a closed shape. Okay, it's just something. So again, same here. I can use a rectangle. So this all depends on intuition, by the way. But it might take a little bit of practice or a little bit of thought into it, but soon it's gonna be easy. Just trust the process. So that's why you should really assess the basic shapes of the character to know which shapes can be drawn over using closed shapes. This one is a continuous, so I can just erase that literally. Or here's another exciting part. You can also do that. And then you can join them. What do I mean by this? I can erase this, and then there's a tape tool. Well, let me just get more. So tape these parts up. So oops. Tape these parts up. There's also another way of doing it, but it's going to require the knowledge of layers to do it. So I don't want to discuss layers, as it might take a little bit more time. So we're not going to be looking into layering for now. But if you're interested, you could look at the reference material I sent to you. It should be there. I'm just going to where's the line? I'm going to make a line here, because I know there's going to be a line. Don't worry about the thickness for now. We're going to be fixing up the thickness later, so don't worry about that for now. And I'm not gonna draw that cape and tail just because I'm saving time. Maybe I'll just draw it in it. Or is it? It's G. I'm gonna just draw the basics for now. Excuse me. Oh, I forgot that circle thing. The crown is salty. I'm going to erase some parts of the circle. Send that out a bit. And then I should have actually made you can actually change the size. I just forgot to do that. I'm just gonna. So yeah, it's mostly just adjusting the lines. And then when this is done, you can actually adjust how these lines end up looking. When you're finished with lining, you can then proceed to how the colors are. The width of the lines. For the most part, you're going to be concerned about how these lines line up. You can adjust the width later. Yeah, that's just a short overview. You can just adjust stuff later. So I know this looks like crap. I'm not gonna continue because I still have things to do. But I'm just gonna show you an example of what this can achieve you, right? You just need to tweak this. And so let me show you. Oh, wait, let me just. You can adjust some. You can achieve something like this. So this is a model. That's different. It's different. It involves layering, and these are all whole shapes for the model. Everything here is a whole shape. None of these are broken lines. Wait. This is one way you can. This is something you can achieve with it. Even like this. You just need to adjust the lines. Alright, so I guess that's going to end for it. I'm not going to continue it anymore. But let me end off with something, by the way. Sometimes you might want to check if they can be fillable. What do I mean by this? There are times when you can't fill it in. So how do you do this? Just select here. With any color that you want, sorry, wrong layer. With any color that you want, go to your vector layer and then choose any color. You can also make sure you're using other colors to check for other parts. And then try with your fill bucket tool if it fills. They will fill if there are no open gaps. They will not fill, however, if there are open gaps, like here for instance. How do I fix that? You can either do it manually by controlling your point, and then fill, see if it fills, or you use the tape tool, tape it to the line closest to it, and then fill. Your tape tool will help guarantee that it closes off the gap, because sometimes it might not close off the gap. Controlling it sometimes will, but your tape tool should help you close off the gap for the most part. So that's one way of checking whether or not your shape can be easily filled. Alright, so I'm gonna leave it off at this. I hope, even though it was a little bit, this is quite rushed, I hope you get something out of it. So bye bye. Thank you.